Okay, so you sent this game in for us to take a look at, and I can see why you're so intrigued by it. It's called Big Bang Legends, and it's a game all about particle physics, but it tries to make it fun by using some familiar game mechanics.
Yeah, it's definitely a pretty unique concept.
Right, it's being described as like a puzzle game, and it's all about elementary particle physics. So you're collecting these things called atom heroes, and you're solving puzzles and going through mazes, and you're even battling antimatter.
And the interesting thing is, this is developed by the same people who made Angry Birds.
That's right. So we're expecting it to be super engaging and addicting, just like Angry Birds, but with this science twist.
I'm really fascinated by the idea of how they might have combined the gameplay that we all know and love from Angry Birds with particle physics. I mean, could you be like using those trajectory and momentum principles that you use in Angry Birds to launch protons at neutrons or something to build atoms?
That's a really interesting thought. It would be really clever if they actually incorporated the real physics into the gameplay. The source material we have mentions these atom heroes that you collect, but it's a little vague on the details. What do you think that means in the context of the game?
It could be a way to represent the different elements, but kind of personify them and give them like unique powers or abilities based on like their actual properties from the periodic table. Like
Mm.
imagine a helium atom hero who's known for its speed because helium has a really low atomic mass. Or maybe you have like a uranium atom hero who's got really high defensive stats because uranium is really dense.
I see what you mean. So it'd be like a fun way to learn about the periodic table
Hmm.
while you're battling your way through the game. So instead of just like memorizing atomic numbers, you're actually like experiencing how those properties translate into like actual gameplay.
Yeah, exactly. It turns learning into a much more active process.
Definitely. One thing that kind of stands out to me though is that the source material that we have only mentions this game being released on iOS, and that was all the way back in 2017. It's 2025 now. Has it made its way to Android yet?
That is a good question. And unfortunately, our sources don't actually give us any information on an Android release.
Hmm. That's a mystery then. So we'll have to see if we can uncover any information on an Android version. But regardless of whether or not it's been released on other platforms, this whole concept raises some really interesting questions about the potential of gamified learning.
For sure. So we've talked about how this game, Big Bang Legends, might use that Angry Bird style gameplay to actually teach people about physics.
Yeah.
But what about the educational depth of it? Like, could it actually supplement real classroom learning? Or is it just more of a lighthearted introduction to some basic concepts?
Right, that's a good point. It would be great if it could go beyond just the surface level.
I think it would be really impressive if they could tie the game into existing science curriculums. Like, imagine kids using this game to visualize atomic structures,
Yeah.
or even like trying to understand concepts like nuclear fusion, but in this interactive way.
That would really be a game changer for science education. Instead of just passively reading about protons and neutrons in a textbook, they're actually like manipulating them in the game.
Exactly.
And the game also mentions battling antimatter, but it doesn't really go into detail about how that works. Do you think it's just like a fictional element? Or could they actually be trying to teach about the concept of matter, antimatter, annihilation?
I think it could be a cool way to visually represent that concept. Like maybe players have to strategically combine matter and antimatter to create these powerful energy bursts or something, or solve puzzles based on those principles of annihilation.
That would be really cool because it would take what's normally a really abstract concept and make it tangible and something you can interact with.
Exactly. And it'd be a great way to introduce people to some of the more mind-blowing ideas in particle physics.
I have to admit, though, I'm a little bit skeptical about how much depth a mobile game can really offer. Can they really go beyond those basic concepts and teach something meaningful about particle physics?
Yeah, that's a valid concern. It would definitely be a missed opportunity if they only just scratched the surface of these ideas.
Hmm.
But we can't really dismiss its potential without seeing how they've actually implemented these things in the game.
Yeah, right.
It's possible that they've come up with some really creative ways to integrate those deeper scientific concepts.
Yeah, we need to see it to believe it, I guess.
Mm.
But even if it's mostly focused on just introducing those basic concepts, it could still be really valuable.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. How many kids do you know who are really excited about learning particle physics? A game like this could be the spark that makes them curious and that leads them to actually want to learn more about it.
Yeah, it could totally change their whole perception of science. and make it seem less intimidating
Yeah.
and more like a fun puzzle to solve.
Yeah, exactly.
And that shift in attitude can make a huge difference in what they decide to study later on.
Definitely.
It's like sneaking in a science lesson while they think they're just playing a game.
I like that.
So we've talked about how Big Bang Legends has the potential to be educational and entertaining, but we still have a lot of questions about the specifics.
Yeah, we need to see it in action to really understand how it balances the gameplay with the educational content and how deeply it actually goes into the particle physics and how well it engages people.
It's a little frustrating not having all the details yet, but I guess it just makes me more curious to actually try it out myself.
The mystery definitely adds to the intrigue. All right, so for anyone listening, if you have an iOS device and you're interested in particle physics, or you just like a good puzzle game, I'd say Big Bang Legends is definitely worth checking out.
Definitely. And if you've already played it, let us know what you think. Does it live up to the hype? Did you actually learn something about particle physics while you were playing? And speaking of feedback, we haven't talked about the reception to this game yet. What kind of reception has Big Bang Legends gotten from players and critics? Our source material doesn't really say.
Yeah, it's hard to gauge how people have responded to it without more specific information.
I guess we can speculate a bit, though, right? I mean, this game is made by the same people who made Angry Birds. And Angry Birds was a global phenomenon, so wouldn't it be safe to assume that they brought some of those same qualities to Big Bang Legends?
I think that's a reasonable assumption.
Yeah.
They've definitely proven that they can make engaging and successful games, but I think it's worth pointing out that educational games sometimes struggle to reach that same kind of mainstream audience, even if they're well designed.
That's true.
There's always the risk that people might see the educational aspect as a downside, especially if they're just looking for pure entertainment.
That's a good point.
But maybe Big Bang Legends has figured out how to strike that balance between education and entertainment so that it appeals to both types of players.
That would be really impressive.
It would be a big accomplishment. It could even signal a shift in the gaming industry, where learning and entertainment become more and more intertwined.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, it would open up so many possibilities for both game developers and educators.
So to sum up, we have this potentially groundbreaking game that combines particle physics and puzzle solving, but we need more information to really understand what kind of impact it's had.
We need to know how it plays, how it teaches, and how people have responded to it.
I'm really intrigued, and I'm ready to learn more. So should we move on to talking about the possibility of Big Bang Legends on other platforms?
Let's do it. So far, we've been focused on this iOS version of Big Bang Legends, but you also asked us to think about this game on other platforms.
Right. What about consoles or PCs or even like VR?
Yeah, it's interesting because our sources only talk about iOS, but it's 2025 now. And that original information was from 2017, so 8 years ago. A lot could have happened.
For sure. Let's start with consoles. Imagine playing Big Bang Legends on like a big screen TV with like way better graphics, maybe even like a multiplayer mode.
Oh, yeah. That would be a totally different experience. The controls would have to be different, too. Like, instead of tapping and swiping on your phone screen, you might be using like a joystick to move your atom heroes around, or buttons to activate their special powers.
And can you imagine the multiplayer possibilities? Like you could team up with your friends to build these super complex atoms, or you could like challenge each other in antimatter battle.
Yeah, it could be like a social learning experience where you're working together, but also competing. And you're learning about particle physics at the same time.
I wonder how they would adapt the puzzle and maze elements for a console game, though. Would they come up with new types of challenges? Or like new gameplay mechanics that take advantage of the bigger screen and the more complex controls?
Yeah, maybe they could even incorporate real-time physics simulations into the gameplay. Like, imagine using your console controller to manipulate gravitational fields or electromagnetic forces to, like, guide your atom heroes through these crazy mazes.
Whoa. That would be taking gamified learning to like a whole new level. It wouldn't just be about memorizing facts anymore. It'd be about like understanding how these concepts actually work.
Exactly. It would be like bridging that gap between theoretical knowledge and actually applying it.
Yeah. So what about PCs? How do you think Big Bang Legends would work on a desktop computer?
I think on PC, there would be even more opportunities for like complex simulations and visualizations. Like, imagine being able to zoom in and explore these 3D models of atoms, or you could like watch these particle trails during a matter-antimatter annihilation.
Oh, wow. It would be like having a virtual laboratory on your computer
Yeah.
where you can run your own experiments. and
Yeah.
make your own observations.
And with how powerful PCs are these days,
Yeah.
they could create these incredibly detailed and realistic representations of what's happening at the subatomic level.
Yeah, it would be like bringing the invisible world of particle physics to life.
And we can't forget about modding either. PC gamers love to mod their games, so I bet they'd come up with all sorts of crazy modifications and expansions for Big Bang Legends.
That's a good point. Imagine people creating their own custom Atom heroes or designing these wild new levels and challenges.
It would be amazing.
Okay, so we've talked about consoles and PCs, but now for the most mind-blowing possibility of all, VR. Can you imagine stepping inside Big Bang Legends and like interacting with atoms and antimatter at the subatomic scale?
Oh man, that would be incredible. It would be so immersive. You could reach out and grab a proton or a neutron and like feel its weight and texture in your hand.
And you could watch matter-antimatter annihilation happen right in front of you.
It would be a completely different way to learn about particle physics.
Yeah, instead of just looking at diagrams in a textbook, you'd be experiencing these concepts firsthand.
It would make the invisible visible.
And with VR technology getting better all the time,
We could make these experiences even more realistic and detailed.
I know, right? Imagine feeling the heat from nuclear fusion, or seeing the curvature of space-time around a black hole.
VR has so much potential for science education.
It could make learning about science truly awe-inspiring.
Okay, but even beyond the educational aspect, think about the entertainment possibilities. You could fly through a nebula, explore a distant planet, maybe even travel through a wormhole.
VR could be the ultimate escape from reality.
All right, so we've been talking about all these possibilities for Big Bang Legends on other platforms, but I think it's important to remember that there would be some challenges too.
Yeah, it's not as simple as just copying and pasting the game onto a different device.
Exactly. They'd have to really think carefully about how to adapt the gameplay and the educational content to make sure it works well on each platform.
So for consoles, for example, they'd need to make sure the controls feel natural and intuitive with the gamepad.
Right, and they'd need to take advantage of the more powerful hardware to improve the graphics and the physics.
And for PCs, they'd need to make sure the game runs smoothly on a wide range of different computers.
Yeah, and they'd probably want to add features that PC gamers expect, like customizable controls and graphics settings,
And VR has its own unique challenges.
especially with motion sickness.
Yeah.
They need to be really careful about how they design the virtual environment to make sure it's comfortable to play.
It sounds like adapting Big Bang Legends to these other platforms would take a lot of work.
It would, but it would also be a huge opportunity to reach even more people with this game.
And to get more people excited about science.
Exactly.
So what do you say we shift gears a bit now and talk about the developers of Big Bang Legends, this company called Lightyear?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the game itself, Big Bang Legends. But I think it's time we talk about the people who made it.
Yeah, late near.
They've got a pretty impressive background.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, they're the same team behind Angry Birds.
Exactly.
And Angry Birds was like a global phenomenon.
Yeah.
Millions of people played that game.
Yeah, it was huge.
So they clearly know how to make games that people love.
They really know what they're doing.
But what's so interesting to me is that they decided to make a game about particle physics, which isn't exactly known for being super popular.
Right, it's not like the most mainstream topic.
So it makes you think that they must be really passionate about science education.
Yeah, they must want to share their love of science with other people.
And to make these complex ideas easier to understand,
Definitely.
I wonder what their vision for this game was. Do you think they were hoping to inspire a whole new generation of physicists? Or maybe they just wanted to make science seem a little less intimidating?
That's a great question. And unfortunately, our sources don't really tell us what their goals were.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know what they were thinking. But I guess we can speculate a little
Sure.
based on what we know about the game. And their background with Angry Birds, it seems like they were probably trying to create a fun way to introduce people to particle physics.
Yeah, I think that's a safe bet.
They took something that can be really dry and complicated and turned it into this colorful, interactive experience.
And they used the popularity of mobile gaming to their advantage.
Yeah.
They knew that if they could make a fun mobile game about science, it could reach a huge audience.
Yeah, it was a smart move.
It really was.
So we've talked about the possibility of this game inspiring future scientists, but I think it's also important to think about the bigger picture. Like, what does this game tell us about the future of science education? What do you think?
Well, I think it shows that we're moving away from traditional ways of teaching science.
You mean like textbooks and lectures?
Exactly.
And moving towards more interactive and engaging approaches.
Right. It's about using the tools and technology that kids are already using,
Like video games.
to make learning more relevant and fun.
Because let's face it, most kids would rather play a video game than read a textbook.
Oh, definitely.
And games have this amazing ability to grab our attention and make us want to keep playing. And while we're playing, we're learning without even realizing it.
That's the power of games.
And Big Bang Legends is a perfect example of that. It's not just about memorizing facts. It's about experiencing those concepts firsthand.
Exactly.
You're interacting with them.
Yeah.
And that makes it so much more memorable.
And it can make you want to learn even more.
So we've covered a lot in this deep dive.
We have.
We talked about how the game works and the potential it has for education.
We talked about what it might look like on other platforms.
And we even talked about the developers and their vision.
It's been a fascinating journey.
It has. But before we wrap things up, I think it's important to point out that Big Bang Legends is just one example of a much bigger trend that's happening right now.
Yeah.
Educational games and gamified learning are becoming more and more popular.
It's changing the way we think about education.
Technology is giving us all these new tools to make learning more interactive and engaging.
And games are leading the way.
They can capture our imagination.
And make even the toughest subjects seem fun and rewarding.
Big Bang Legends is a great example of that.
Yeah, it shows what's possible.
When you combine a passion for science with the power of games.
So if you're listening to this and you're a gamer or a science nerd or just someone who's curious about the world,
I think you should definitely check out Big Bang Legends.
you might discover a love for particle physics that you never knew you had.
Or at the very least, you'll have a lot of fun while learning something new.
And if you've already played Big Bang Legends, we want to hear from you.
Let us know what you thought. Did you like the gameplay? Did you learn anything new?
Your feedback helps us understand this whole world of educational games.
So keep exploring, keep learning.
And keep playing.
That's all for this deep dive into Big Bang Legends. Thanks for joining us.
Stay curious.
And we'll see you in the next deep dive.